Sometimes you have to improvise. And that's what we're doing today here in the lab, Business Athlete Nation. I'm always going to show up. Even if some of you say, well, but you have nothing to offer. No, but I do though. Some of you are bored today. Some of you are sitting around wondering what's next. I'm like, all right, I'll give you something what's next. I'll give you a couple things to chew on today. Joseph Malone was our scheduled guest, but admittedly, don't know where Joseph is. So we are going to jump in for a few moments because I can't break the streak. I don't operate that way. I just don't operate that way. I just can't break the streak. Some of you are here for the guests. Some of you here for Uncle Keith. And some of you just don't get enough of what's going on here in the mornings in the lab. So I thought I'd jump in for a few moments to do two things. Reintroduce you to what we're doing here in the lab. Gonna maybe flip through the YouTube channel for a few moments. All around this concept and idea that I thought about and I discussed this morning on the morning show, on Mornings in the Lab with Keith and Nicole. And that was, I have an invite for all of you, nation. Oh, I have an invite for all of you. Oh, I do. I'm going to stop the ticker because Joseph Malone's not showing up, I don't think. So I'm going to get to my point. Let's just see how many people are paying attention right now. And then maybe we'll get to the point. Because I have something that I know that you're not even thinking about right now. You wouldn't even cross your mind. So I'm going to give you an offer. Yeah, you all can leave. See ya. Yep, bye. Yeah, no guests here. No, don't want to hang out with Keith. That's completely fine. I have no problem with that. Those that want to stick around will enjoy the content. Those that don't, well, that's fine too. But listen, I'm going to, there we go. Good. All right, set up over here. So why don't I do this for you guys? Let's just have some fun today. And I'm going to make you a proposition. Check this out. Oh, I got the best idea for you. So I want to invite you to take me to bed with you. Yeah, it's a true story. There's a hook. There's some nice music. So what I'm thinking, the best way you can end your day today is you can crawl up into the sack. Yeah, that's the bed. Just for all you thinking in the gutter. Or you're all just, nation, you got to get out of the gutter, man. So crawl into bed next to your partner. Say to them, you know what, honey? You know what, partner? And they're going to go, yes, honey. Yes, partner. And you might want to say to them, you know what? We're not going to put on late night television. No, we're not going to put any of that late night stuff on our phones. No, we're going to open up the old YouTuber. Yeah, you know, that little platform that sits on your phone, sits on every device on the planet. And you're going to go into Keith in the Lab. And you're going to look at all these wonderful shows with all these incredible human beings that have come through the lab. And you're going to select one. And I might invite you to check out the one that pops up right in front of you. That says, stuck in a hot tub with Dana Carvey. It'll make you laugh. It'll keep you entertained. And by the time it gets a little bit boring, at the last 57, 58, 59 minute mark, you go to sleep. Because we are here to entertain and inform you. So I invite you to introduce a new routine to your life and take the chief Bapl to bed and close your day off with me. No, I'm not going to make you watch it twice. So there you go. There's something for you to consider. If you are lonely at night, or maybe you are considering adding a third option to the bedtime routine, I am your choice. Bring me in. So what you're thinking, Keith, what are we going to do in bed? I have something for you to do in bed with me. Maybe I'll show you. So why don't I share my screen and give you some ideas to consider when you want to crawl into the sack tonight. Let's have a look at some of the content we've recently created here in the lab. On a quick snapshot, you want to chop by last week, Mark Bower, soldier. He's coming back for round 2 next month. This guy asked him a question about, what's he get out of bed for every single day and why does he want to go back to the military? He's like, I'm a soldier. I'm a soldier, heart to heart. So you want to hear that story. You want to dig into the conversation I had with Mark Bower. So if you're going to bed, but you feel a little amped up and you're not ready to go to bed yet, that's a good one for you. Making micro moments. I sat down with Sam Oblitz last week. Sam. Oh my goodness, Sam. Sam, young entrepreneur, making his way, building perhaps the next big marketing, advertising business platform. You might not know of claim.co yet, but I'm sure you're going to. Hey, if you're starting a podcast, if you are starting a podcast, or you're thinking about starting a podcast, so hold on. So if you're thinking about starting a podcast, I think what you want to do is you want to consider speaking with Ryan Sullivan. There's the hang for you. There is the hang for you. I'm going to, so we have, I think, Joseph showing up here in a moment. I'm just going to send him the link to the show, and we're going to keep going here. So because we know that you're thinking about going to bed, you're going to take Uncle Keith with you. Embracing body-led therapy. Had an exceptional conversation with Trisha Edwards last week. Just this idea of ditching kind of all the rules and leading from what's inside your body and moving forward with that. Future POTUS advisor, we had Calvin Sarelli join the lab a couple weeks ago. He's destined to be a future advisor to the President of the United States. We had Christian Espinosa. Oh my God, Christian. You know, I'm actually just, there's something happening right in front of me right now. We need to do more segments like this where we are pushing people in, talking to people about the shows we've done in the past while we're waiting for our awesome guests. Now, I know Joseph wasn't late. No, he was fumbling. So Joseph's just getting used to Uncle Keith here in the lab. So he doesn't know how I operate. He doesn't know that I love to tease with love. I think Joseph maybe on the wrong time clock, or maybe he wrote the time down. We know he's thinking about the future. I bet you he wrote it down in pencil and it got scribbled off the piece of paper. And he's like, oh my God, I forgot. I missed the appointment with Uncle Keith in the lab. I got to go see him. So we have Joseph Malone joining me in the lab. What's going on, Mr. Malone?
Hey, what's up, dude? My sincerest apologies, man. I hate being late.
Listen, it happens. You missed the opener. I made an invite. I gave an invite to Nation. I gave the invite, Joseph, that they could take me to bed, and you interrupted my dialogue about that. But that's okay. I was waiting for you anyway. So, I'm like, I'm thinking that there's a spot in people's lives for old Mr. Keith Bilous here live in the lab, and there might be somebody at night thinking, oh, I want to take Keith and Joseph to bed. So what I'm saying, Nation, is tonight, tomorrow night, the next night, you wound up your busy day. You might want to throw on the old YouTube on the TV. You might want to throw your YouTube on the phone, crawl into the sack with your partner, and pull it up and watch old Keith and Joseph have a good old conversation like we're going to have coming up.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So where do you join us from, my friend?
So, well, today I'm in the workshop out in Chicago. I'm in Chicago, Illinois.
In the workshop in Chicago. That is fantastic. So I introduced you as somebody who looks towards the future and thinks about the future and thinks about how the future can be kind of, I'll use my word, crazy and maybe kind of messed up that we're not thinking about. And you're somebody that prepares people for thinking about things that maybe they should be thinking about that they're not thinking about. Did I kind of describe that correctly? Yeah,
there's a sense of, being prepared, contingencies, thinking about the future. But honestly, it ultimately is to bring the person back into the present as well.
Interesting. So I need to pull up. So I shuffled my notes around when I was shifting on the fly, Joseph. So you are a combat veteran. You're the founder of the Southern Cross Safety Academy. Mm-hmm. You have struggled with PSD. You've had a traumatic brain injury. You've had trauma since post-military. You discovered this new lease on life through this application of discovering universal laws, mm-hmm. which not only pulled you back from the brink, but propelled you into fulfilling purpose-driven life. And you kind of referred to that in just a few moments ago when you said, bringing people forward. So today we're going to talk about redemption. I think we're going to talk about a commitment to teaching others. We're going to talk about, this was really striking to me, Joseph, when your belief that people that are capable of great violence can also preserve great peace, and just the idea of power and responsibility of that. Because I never really thought about it through that lens. But when I'm going to assume the way you presented that is that you're saying, somebody who is equally capable of going hard and deep and maybe with a considerable amount of violence could equally have the biggest heart.
Well, I think the only people capable of preserving great peace are those capable of great violence. I don't think if you're incapable of violence, I don't think you're capable of keeping peace.
Yeah, fair statement. So let's hang on that. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Yeah. So let's talk about Joseph Malone. You joined us from Chicago today. Where are you from?
Yeah, that's where I grew up. I grew up on the southwest side of the city.
Oh, yeah.
And got involved with a weird group of people at a really early age. A lot of hard drugs. I've done every drug there is known to mankind before I was even 18 years old. And just saw my buddy join the Marines, saw his transformation, and knew there was only one or two places that I was going to go if I didn't make a change. And so that's when that's when I made the change a year later.
No kidding.
Mm-hmm.
That you,
To the day.
you got smacked that much in the head where it was like, holy, I got one of two choices. It's either going to be, or maybe three: death, jail, or
Marines. Yeah.
And that was your own mirror, Joseph. There's no influence, no mom, no dad, no family talking about it. It was just your own. Like I'm a big fan, man, of just of the moment. But then we go deeper behind the moment, and then there's even one that's further back. That. So take me through those nights, or that. How did you get to that spot where you're like, holy fuck, man, I gotta do something.
So, John and I were very close. I mean, he was a brother to me, and I even lived with his family for a little bit in high school. And, ironically enough, I'm now married to his sister. And when I just, we did everything together. We hung out underneath a bridge on the train tracks for our entire adolescence. That's what we did. We just found ways to keep ourselves occupied and got in all sorts of trouble. And when he decided to join the Marine Corps, his family was going through a lot. Like his one cousin had just killed himself. His other cousin, the brother of that guy, had been missing for like 2 years, which we ended up finding him later, buried in a guy's basement. He was murdered. And so a lot of family turmoil was going on for them. And so when he left and joined the Marine Corps, I went to his boot camp graduation, and it was like I didn't even, recognize my friend. And I knew that it was good. And I didn't want him to go to war by himself. And I knew that if I kept going down my path, that, I was gonna probably die. I'd already overdosed a few times and, almost been arrested. So it just wasn't very fun.
I did not want him to go to war by himself.
Yeah.
Joseph. That's there's no selflessness in that statement.
I mean, it's just is what it is, man. I mean, when you grow up with a dude and you go through those types of things that him and I had already been through, I mean, it was like just another thing going into a foreign country and whatever. It didn't really register with me as like any sort of big deal. We'd already been through so many other things before. There was just another level.
No kidding. Yeah. So you're describing to me then a life that in your mind was you weren't going to see anything worse than what you had been experiencing, just what you had been doing.
I mean, it probably would, but yeah, when you're using heroin on the south side of Chicago as a young kid, you see a lot of really fucked up stuff. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm supposed to swear or not.
100%. We were a real honest dialogue, safe space, my friend. Be as real and be as raw and being as honest as you want. Yeah. South side of Chicago, sticking needles in your arms, just going down that path, looking around yourself, going, okay.
Yeah, hookers, piss stained mattresses, old dudes, beating each other up, stabbing each other, Molotov cocktails, just like weird stuff, man. I mean, it's a grimy, what a lot of people don't understand is just how gross and grimy drug abuse is. You see people with scabs and skin diseases and flakage, and little kids, are being breastfed by their mom that's smoking crack, bragging about their welfare check. Like, that with me, a 16-year-old, like that's like, it's a grimy world, man. And what's unfortunate is that the youth, like myself included at the time, you think that that's cool. Like, oh man, I'm smoking crack with my buddy's mom, and it's like, no, like that's just really sad and really pathetic. And, so you get exposed to a lot of that stuff. And of course, there's a lot of other things that come along with like drug abuse, a lot of violence. I was never really a violent person, but you see it, and just it's part of that life.
Joseph, when you ended up in theater, where did you go?
Everywhere. Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria. I went to a few other places as well out in Southeast Asia for some more humanitarian driven operations.
When you landed in those places in those early days, Joseph, you said you weren't a violent person, but you had yet been exposed to so much and had been a part of so much. Did the violence for you come naturally that is very much part of war?
Yeah, I mean, they indoctrinate you pretty good when you go through boot camp in the Marine Corps. And so like kill and, all this stuff. I drank the juice pretty hard for my first couple of years. And then after I matured a little bit, because I actually got out for a year. And then that's when I went into the special operations community. I went back in and, I had matured. It took a couple of years, but it was just really more of like a willingness. Like, to put it plainly, like I've always just been down for whatever's going on. I'm not going to involve myself into something that I'm not like going to be fully committed in. And like I at least do a little bit of thinking before I do stuff, most of the time, at least. Maybe not all the time, but yeah. So that's it was just like, okay, this is going to be a part of it. And whenever it presents itself to me, I just got to follow the process, and hopefully I'll get the outcome.
when you ended up in those first places, were you ever scared of dying, or was it because of your experiences on the south side of Chicago and you felt maybe sometimes you were already dead in those experiences that, going to war was just part of your journey?
So I wouldn't say that I don't really keep any of the emotions that I've had at these different phases of my life. And it's because I've been at the time unconsciously recreating and reinventing myself. I understand how the process works now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I could do it like on purpose. But what I like, I don't even consider myself like a former drug addict. I don't consider myself a former alcoholic. I don't.
You're fascinating, man. You are fascinating. Thank you for opening up with me and continuing to open up with me. But you just said something. I understand the process now.
Mhm.
You understand the process of, I'm going to finish the sentence, reinvention. You've
Yeah,
reinvented yourself a number of times.
many times.
You've taken the emotions of each situation, put them into a compartment, if I may, for you, put them over there, done with that, over there. Oh, I got to step back into that world again. Special ops, you're re-engaged. Am I reading you correct?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's sometimes it does more damage than good because I almost question myself and my life experiences
Of course.
when it could really benefit other people. Like I start talking to a group of kids using hard drugs, and then I start thinking to myself, who am I talking to these kids? And I'm like, oh fuck, like yeah, I've had a lot of shit go up my nose. I've had a lot of needles in my arms. I've like literally have smoked crack with my buddy's mom while breastfeeding an infant, bragging about how she just got this dope off of her welfare check. Like I've done drug runs with grown men. I've watched them literally molest girls that were like my age, like perverted people, like fucked up stuff, man. And I it's like where your attention goes, your energy flows. And so a lot of people make the mistake and being like, oh, I'm a recovered addict. And I got a bunch of friends who are still using that shit and doing whatever. But it's like when you think of yourself in that way, you're creating the neural connections in the brain that are associated with that person. And so I step into it from time to time, and I try to reflect more on the lessons that I learned and write them down and reapply them into a future context, like for life now. But for the most part, when I went into these deployments, it was just honestly, it was just where I was, and I'm a big person on presence, and I just tried to remain as present as I possibly could and make as much of a impact as I could. And by impact, I don't mean win the hearts and minds of the Afghan people. I honestly fucking hate Afghanistan, and I hate the fact that we were there doing what we were doing. I hate the fact that I just hate the military industrial complex altogether. And but I always tried to make as much of an impact as possible in terms of like what I could do with the people that I was with.
It's interesting, Joseph, because my question leading as you were speaking was going to have to do with cynicism. But no need to ask that question because you've clearly laid it out that you have no time for the military industrial complex. And before we go there, I can tell just from the moment you walked into the room, Joseph, that you make yourself present, you make yourself aware, and you're now in this moment. And I can see that about you. It would have seemed to be a remarkable attribute. You just come in, switch on, boom. Probably through training in many ways, no?
Yeah, that probably has something to do with it. But repetition of experiences and
Yes.
it's just life's not fun when you're sitting here thinking, oh, my text message, or my emails, or what's going to happen after this. Like, so before you know it, your life's just passing you by.
Well, and that skill of awareness, Joseph, I speak to business people here, entrepreneurs, athletes, people that are, working their way through life, and awareness and being in the moment's a difficult task for many people, frankly. And right? So just through your experience in life, and I'm sure a lot of the military training or just in those moments, growing up in the shit, you're in the moment and you're like, yeah, I'm here and I'm just in this spot in time, and you're just taking it all in, right? It just slows everything down for you.
Yeah, it's actually one of my favorite things about. So I used to I surfed every day for years and years when I was living on the coast, and that's what I loved about surfing is that it forced you in that moment. So I love about skydiving. So I love about scuba. Anything that's high risk. Even war. My favorite part about going into combat is that you have to live in the moment. Like you have there is no left or right lateral limit on that. And I'm not saying that I'm like some grand master at this because every day I have to keep bringing my focus, my attention back, to center. Like I get scatterbrained, and that's when my anxiety starts to ramp up, and I could feel it in my body. And so I, breathe and I take a moment and I just tell myself to focus. And then I like dumb down my day's responsibilities to like one thing. Like if I could just do one thing today, and then I'll accomplish that thing, and it's like still the morning time, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Well, anxiety's relieved. Well, what's the second thing I could do? And then usually I'll get like 3 to 6 things done a day, which is super productive. But yeah, so it's a combination of just experiences and training and repetition.
I'm glad you're speaking about this, because I just talked about, I think it was yesterday on the show. I woke up in a moment yesterday morning with anxiety, and I had to catch myself pausing, like you just said, put myself in the moment, focusing on one thing. It's like I literally did what you just explained. I focus on one thing. Okay, I gotta get that done. And I'm like, okay, awesome. And then I went on to do. It was a mental day yesterday, but I'll tell you, man, I had to find myself. I had to mentally pause because I had some anxiety yesterday morning. Right. So
yeah, I'm dealing with that today. Actually, it's part of the reason I've been late. We just had a newborn a few weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. A lot of people like having newborns in the house, and my mornings have been a big part of the reason as to why I was able to make such drastic recovery. And we dive into that here momentarily.
Yes.
But, with the infant, dude, it's just like it shoots everything. And that has spiraled, my schedule with a lot of business stuff going on right now, really out of control. And so I was literally like, I normally work out at like 4 a.m. I'm still getting my workout in right now, but it's just a matter of focusing on that one thing. And then once you accomplish that, you feel like you've done something good.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you. So you had a newborn 4 weeks ago. I started this morning show. I stream live in the mornings, Joseph, because I just thought it was a good thing to do. I wanted to tap into people's habits, and it's just taken on a life of its own. But I'm a morning workout guy like you. And I'm like, bark. Like it's like my morning now goes forever working out because I got to get it done here. It's just on the other side of this wall over here, right? So I jump in, I do a few sets, I come in here, do a few things, and it's like the never-ending workout, Joseph, right? So it's been a whole new mental battle for myself to learn this and you're doing the same thing with baby in the house, right?
Yeah, and you don't get as good of a workout in, and I just was telling myself today, anytime there's friction in life, it's happening for you, and that there's, resilience coming out of it. And it's only going to have resilience come out of it if I see it through. And if I don't see it through, and if I sit here and cry and be all fucking depressed about it and bitchy and moody all day, that's actually taking away from the man that I am. And so it's really important that when you're faced with those adversities, that you see them through.
It's interesting that you make this comment today. I made a post this morning on LinkedIn, and it had to do with the fact of, when shit's going sideways, don't blame everybody else. Go look in the mirror.
Always. I don't blame anybody for anything in my entire life. And I've even said this all morning to myself. The reason why I haven't worked out yet is because of me. It's not because of this little infant. This little guy fucking needs me. Like babies. So I'm going to be honest. I hate having a baby around. Babies fucking suck, if you ask me, because they're constantly on the fucking verge of death. Like they're always about to die. They sound like they're dying. When they don't sound like they're dying, you freak out thinking they're dead because they're not making any noise. It's like fucking stressful, man. And when I say stuff like that, people are like my friends were over and they're like, oh, you don't like having to. I'm like, listen to this guy. He's like agonal breathing, and then he's fucking puking all over himself. And I'm like, it's not that I don't like the baby. It's that it's all the constant stress being induced with like, is this thing going to fucking die today? Because they literally can't do anything except lay there and then kill themselves. So, I tell myself though, hey man, like this is your fault that you haven't worked out yet today. You can manage your time a little bit better. Well, I was groggy. So what? Shut the fuck up, dude. Your life is a direct result of your actions and your thoughts and your emotions. And that's it, plain and simple.
You could have got up earlier. You could have stayed up later yesterday. You could have, every choice is really yours, not somebody else's.
True. So true, man.
Right. And I'm the same way. Right. I'm like, okay, I get up at 4:50 or 4:40. Okay, well, fuck, why am I bitching? I should get up 4:30 then.
Yeah. Yeah, right? I mean, I get up at 3 a.m. Well, I should be getting up at 2. Like, yeah. It's really that fucking simple.
Yeah, it is actually, isn't it? It really is.
Dude. And it's crazy. Like, I got so many clients, corporate and individual clients, that will argue with me over like their shit, where it's like, you are capable of curing your own depression. And I say this stuff from experience. You think a freaking kid shooting up dope, losing 9 friends to drugs and suicide before they're even 18 years old, overdosing 3 times, sleeping on piss-stained mattresses in Chicago alleyways. You think that kid's not depressed? I've been fucking depressed. You think a guy who lost his entire fucking element due to a plane crash that he was supposed to be on, that he wasn't on because he fucked up and got in some dumb trouble, lost all of his fucking teammates. You think that dude's not fucking depressed? I've been fucking depressed, but it's up to you to make the choice to fucking fix it. And people will argue with me to the death. I can't fix my depression. It's a disease. No, it's your fucking mentality is what it is.
You've seen it all. You've seen it all on the south side of Chicago. You've seen it all in theater, which gives you, I would think in many ways, the ability and the platform to speak that the way you do. And I have no judgment. I have grace and I have all the time for you. Many people haven't been through the experiences you have been through. Frankly, 99% of the population hasn't. How do you look to somebody who hears you speak and is like, Joseph, come on, man. And I think I know what your answer is, but do you sometimes find a way to have grace for that person as well? Or is it because you know what you know, you believe what you believe, you've seen what you've seen, and you've been a part of it, which is like, no, man, this is what it is.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's strange because when I talk to somebody, like, let's say the way I was just like talking about depression,
yeah,
and I tell people like, dude, you need to just shut the fuck up. Like, it's that simple. People misconstrue that for like not having grace for that person because
or empathy. Maybe and somebody might say, Joseph, you have no empathy, and you're saying probably the opposite. You're actually saying, I'm gonna speak for you. I believe what you're saying is, no, I have more empathy for this person than anybody's ever given them because nobody's ever given them the truth.
And I know where they're coming. I know where they're at. Like, I 100% know exactly where the fuck they're at. I know what it's like to be up all night, putting guns in your mouth every fucking day, finger on the trigger, smashing everything in your fucking apartment, ruining every relationship that you have. I know what it's like to literally destroy your fucking life. Your bank account is below zero, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, living out of a fucking truck in a tent on a beach in a fucking military camp. Nobody even knows. Like, I get what it's like to be in these positions where I once fired my gun off in my house and I sat there and I waited to see who would find my dead body. And nobody came for 3 days until my friend Miles just stopped by randomly just to say what's up. He would have been the guy to find my dead body. I literally didn't fucking move from that room. I was pissing everywhere. That's how fucking low I've been in my life. So I know where people are at when they talk about this stuff. And the fact is that I know their life sucks. I mean, when I meet people who say weird shit like, oh, you're just a violent person or you just love killing. I'm actually an anti-violence advocate. When I get cut off on the street by some douchebag driving, I don't even get mad about it anymore, except for like the immediate moment where it's like, oh shit, somebody might have just been killed right here, but no, we're all good. Okay. Because I know that person's life sucks so much that's how they have to gain validation from the world. And they're going to go back to their house where it probably sucks and their wife probably doesn't respect them or whatever. And their kids probably think they're a fucking loser and they know they're a loser inside. And, it's like, I don't really get too upset about other people's lack of ability to understand these types of things. Because one, it's universal law, me or not me, they exist and there's nothing you can do about it. It's been here before. It's been here before you ever were, you fucking bitch. Like, that's, you don't get to say like that type of stuff. And two is like, I know that my life's like way better than you guys because I don't fucking need external validation from anybody or anything.
You mentioned universal law. I referred to it in the opener. It was part of your bio. When you discovered universal law, you speak about how it changed I'm not going to say changed your life. Maybe it did, but changed your perspective. It made you perhaps look at things on a different level. Speak about universal law and speak about the impact of how it's taught and influenced Joseph.
Yeah, so I got discovered, or I got introduced to it when I was leaving the military. I spent the last 18 months in the Marine Corps. I was in the traumatic brain injury clinic, just going through all sorts of crazy shit.
How did you get your brain injury?
Just multiple explosions, motorcycle crashes, vehicle rollover type shit. It wasn't like I didn't get like shot in the helmet, which I know some dudes who fucking did. But it was just like I was acting weird. I had a lot of headaches. I was just behaving crazy, like erratic.
Really?
And a guy I was working with, he was an EOD technician, a bomb tech.
Yeah.
And this guy had been jacked. Like this dude had like a piece of shrapnel sticking out of his head one day from an ID that went off right next to him. I'm pretty sure it pink misted the guy who kneeled on it. But when that dude looks at you and says you should go get checked out by a doctor, you got to take that shit seriously. Like,
maybe, right?
you know, like that dude's got a TBI, right? Like not me, but like that dude does. And if he says I need to go get checked out, all right, cool. So I got checked out, and they were like, man, yeah, you're got a lot of, well, it's called like calcium deposits in the brain. And so I started getting some treatment, trying to kind of like figure out what was up with me. And in that process, I started learning about neuroscience and what the brain actually is, and how it's just this collection of pathways. And it's the most fascinating thing in the universe.
Yes.
And at the same time, I was, about to kill myself, and I had these episodes, and one night in particular where I was like, okay, I need to stop doing this. And when do I do this? Okay, well, it's at nighttime. Why is it at nighttime? It's when I drink. So I started going to bed early. I'd get up like 3 a.m. This started 2018, and in the morning time, I didn't want to drink. So I would get home. I'd be in bed by like 6:37, and then I would wake up early, and then I was like, okay, now what? And I've never owned a TV in my entire life. And I bought a TV back then to use it as a computer monitor, like a stock trade. I was getting into like trading stocks and stuff, which went horribly for me. I went really good, and then I lost everything. But somehow on YouTube, I came across this guy, Earl Nightingale. I don't even know how or why the algorithm said that was for me. But from him, I started learning about the power of the mind, the secrets of the mind, the greatest secret ever. Is I think the name of his book. Mm-hmm. And that introduced me to like Bob Proctor, which was talking about the law of vibration. And I knew that everything is energy, everything vibrates at a vibrational frequency, but I didn't really understand how that law applied to the universe. Mm-hmm. And that was really the start, learning about how the brain functions, how neuroplasticity can exist, the neurochemical disposition in the human's body, and then also with the vibrational pattern that exists around us. I just started learning about it, and it made sense to me. So I started to apply it, and my life changed.
And my life changed.
Yeah.
You take everything that you had learned up until then, you mix it with what you've learned with around universal law. And when you look at your life now, Joseph, what do you see?
Dude, I can't even describe it. I cannot even describe to you how many times applying the universal laws has just, the best way that I could describe it, and it's different for everybody. But I think like money is just a really good way of keeping score on things, right? Like, I mean, it's just like, hey, like, are you a multimillionaire? It's like, okay, well, if you are, then obviously you're doing something right? And, I could just tell you guys that I haven't reached it yet, but I will here very shortly. And, I'll have a net worth of over $1 million very shortly, within like the next like couple months. I'll have no debt. I keep my mortgage as a debt just because I have such a low interest rate on it that it doesn't make sense for me to pay it all off. And, less than 5 years ago, I was homeless, sleeping on a beach with negative $75,000 and a zero bank balance with a gun in my mouth.
And we didn't forget, we just put it in the compartment over here. We have a new little baby in the world that's going to make your life pretty bright. Once it gets out of baby stage and gets into young Joseph Malone stage, you're like, yeah, I like this little one, right? So you think about that positive adventure coming in front of you as well. So not only, this is what gets exciting, right? Not only is your net worth doing this over the next few months, so is your baby turning into a toddler, turning into a young child, turning into a young teenager. Right, dude, like you look at the last 5 years of your life, look at the next 5-10 years ahead of your life.
Yeah.
You got some pretty awesomeness coming.
Well, and we already have. So, and that's, a bunch of other stuff too. Like I sometimes don't use the family as like a metric of measurement because not everybody could necessarily relate to it.
Sure.
But I mean, my family absolutely is the most important thing in my entire life. Money is just a tool, yes, but it's a means of keeping score. And so just so everybody understands, like my wife is the most ride or die badass chick that I've ever fucking known in my entire life. I've known her for like 27 years now.
Because you met as John's sister, right?
Yeah, I've known her since I was like 12 years old. Our
is John still alive?
No. He ended up, ironically enough, when he got out of the Marines, he ended up developing. This was when they're like pushing Oxycontin out like it was candy, and it's kind of funny. The thing that he saved me from killing myself with ended up taking his life.
Yeah.
So, but such is life, man. I mean, fuck, what are you going to do? Energy can't be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed. And I believe that he's present in whatever way. I don't feel like he's like sitting here with me necessarily, but
well, you married his sister. You know, there's you know, you have these memories, these compartments that you speak of that you can refer back to from time to time, and you know, you now have this little. What's your son's name?
Yeah, so we got Jonah and Jeremiah. So
Two of them.
yeah, we got he's gonna be 3 this year, and then yeah, Jeremiah was just born. So
Spectacular. So talk about being a father, Joseph. Then I thought this was maybe your first one. So I want to go here with you because you've lived a very full life, clearly. Having children now, being a father, what does that represent for you now? Knowing what you know, knowing what these young men could end up doing one day. Hey, Dad, I want to go into the Marines. Or you're like, nah, fuck the military industrial complex. You're not going there. You know, how do you parent, knowing how maybe you weren't parented? Like, speak about this, Joseph.
yeah, I'm not, you know, it'll be interesting as he gets older, but I feel like, strangely enough, I've still maintained, even before I had kids, like the same principles and ideas that I would, because I've dated women who had kids, and I was like, basically, you know, so I've always kind of had like an idea of how I wanted to parent, and it's really just like the example and the man that I want to be, right? So, right now it's awesome. You know, he's 3 almost, and it's a fucking blast, you know. But, you know, he's speaking, and every time I see him, we're just messing around with each other, and he's in the yard eating a fucking chunk of steak, you know, barefisted with no shoes and no pants on, pissing in the yard, playing with a dog, and I'm like, all right, that's cool.
It must be extraordinary for you to have your own child after being in places like Afghanistan and seeing children in those situations, different places in the world where you were there for humanitarian efforts, seeing children in different situations. Now to have your own, I can't imagine some of the love that you feel sometimes when you're embracing your child, and just if you do take the time to reflect upon what you've seen and been a part of, how much more important that is with that embrace.
Yeah, and it is, man. Like I don't think there's ever a moment where I don't feel like, you know, that immense, you know, that immensity of love and you know, passion towards them. And I feel like as he gets older, the only way that I can parent is just to lead by example, and you know, to be very honest with my kid, just like I am with anybody else. And you know, if he wants to join the military, I mean, he'll already know the stories that I have to tell. I'm not going to be one of those dads that doesn't tell his kids.
Yes.
You know, because what's the point of that then? You know, now he ends up going off in some bullshit war, loses his legs and his nuts or whatever. You know, I want him to be, you know, a man capable of great, you know, lethality, and he will be. And I'm not like worried about, you know, him turning out the opposite way, because again, your energy is a manifestation of your thoughts. And you know, if you're living your life in constant worry, well, then of course you're gonna, you know, manifest that in your life. You're operating on that vibrational frequency, law of vibration, and therefore you're going to receive what's in tune with that. And so I look forward to seeing the young men that they become. That's for sure.
I love that. I'm going to leave that. We're going to leave that chapter of our show with that statement. Let's dip into the military industrial complex. You have questions about it. I can tell there's some comments you're going to make about it. Yet the world seems to be moving back into that again. You know, a deeper sense of, okay, diplomacy is dead. We got to go back into, you know, war mode. Let's talk about the military industrial complex. Talk about your experiences. Talk about how you feel about it today, the state of the world, the state of war today. I would love to hear your opinions on this, Joseph.
It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. I mean, this whole thing with Iran and, you know, Israel and Palestine and Russia and, you know, Ukraine, like it's something. So the only thing, and this is where I think like my experiences as like a druggy kid and like a special operations Marine, like literally the action arm of the U.S. fucking military, like government, the White House, you know, is it's like, why is a really prevalent question. And all I ever see is politicians lining their pockets. You know, you hear about these $50 billion aid packages to Ukraine. Why do we still have homeless veterans on the street? You know, like, why are we allowing all these legal immigrants into the country? And we're signing off hundreds of billions, $100 billion. We could have given every American almost $1 billion at this point. Kids and geriatrics on their deathbed. We've almost given Ukraine $350 billion. So if we really give a shit about the world, like, first of all, why are we even incorporating NATO further on Russian borders. Like people have such a skewed perspective of Vladimir Putin and like Russia. Like, yeah, he's a gangster ass dude, and he's probably a psychopath and all that stuff, but it doesn't benefit him, to be at war with us. Who does it benefit? It benefits our politicians. How does Nancy Pelosi and these other douchebags who've been in office for 20 plus years have multi-million dollars of net worth? How do they always get to make the perfect stock trades? Why do we allow political tenure to begin with? How do we allow these people to take on positions with Raytheon, Boeing, these major Lockheed Martin conglomerates where they sign these $50 billion aid packages? And where do you think all that money goes? Right back into their pockets. And I mean, it's just such common fucking sense to somebody like me, at least, because I understand how drug deals work and I understand how government works. And I mean, it's fucking fucked up, dude. And it's sad. And unfortunately, it's one of the many facets that they use to keep the American public preoccupied so that we actually don't see what's taking place right here within our own nation.
When you talk about special ops, and I'm going to weave this back into what we're talking about right now, but you talk about what's really happening and how the world really works. You're flying into places with suitcases of cash and giving suitcases of cash to people to make shit happen, right? That's really what it's into. Or like I'm speaking kind of really loosely, but that really actually is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, that literally happens.
Like, because I'm pretty sure if I've watched enough, I'm gonna have some fun here. I've watched enough movies, I've watched enough Matt Damon doing Jason Bourne, and I'm thinking some of the shit you've done in your special ops stuff. Who were you with in special ops?
I was a MARSOC Marine, so Marine Special Operations Command.
Okay, and what kind of role did you play in on that team?
So, well, it's like a multifaceted role. So I was an element member, I was an assistant element leader, and then I was an element leader, and then I did an intel billet. And then you do everything from like communications, medical, jumping. Yeah, there's all sorts of little stuff that you do as well.
So, dude, I have to ask because listen, I'm a young boy like you were once. Like, what's some of the craziest shit you've done? Because I got people listening to our show going, Keith, you got to ask Joseph, man, like, what's some of the craziest shit he's done? Like, where's some of the craziest shit you've seen? Like, let's take us to the movies with Joseph Malone, if we can.
Yeah, definitely shooting at another human being is pretty wild. Like, you don't really think about it much in the moment, but when you like actually sit back and think about it, you're like, that's pretty fucking
That wild. Is, yes.
But like the craziest, most movie thing, I guess, would definitely be with, ISIS was pretty intense a few times. There was like literally like 300 men kamikaze in the fucking front lines with US like armored personnel carriers with like ISIS flags flying off of them and stuff, and literally just bombs blowing off everywhere and fucking rockets and mustard gas. And then, another pretty crazy event was we did an amphibious assault. I can't really talk too much about this one.
I get it.
But we did a literal amphibious assault on the Euphrates River. With just crazy air support and gunpowder, just fucking destroying everything in the world. It was pretty intense.
Does it surprise you that people don't hear about this stuff?
No, because
or we see more of it now on places like X, and are we seeing it more? Are we seeing more of it on Instagram, X, Telegram, or is that still just a bunch of bullshit?
No, you're not even. By the time it makes it to any like social media platform, you're already 2, 3, 4 layers behind in terms of like what's actually going on the ground, because the only way that you could ever really know is if you're out there. And I mean, dude, it's no joke, like if anybody does go out there with a camera, you're in a guerrilla territory, man. Like,
yes,
you're at the mercy of whatever commander is operating. I don't mean US commander, I mean like local fucking guerrilla force commander. Like,
right. Yes.
They'll take shit, they'll fucking kill you, they'll throw you in the fucking ditch. Like, there's no rules except for what they say goes. And so a lot of the time it's all just watered down stuff. And that's why I say what's really going on in the world.
I was just going to bring it back to that, because that isn't it? It's flying into places with suitcases. Here's some cash, and I'll crack a comment here, whether the suitcase is going to Nancy Pelosi in the US or whether the suitcase is going to somewhere in Egypt or Ecuador or wherever. There's a suitcase going around the planet, isn't there, with cash in it?
Yeah, sometimes it's a trash bag.
Well, yeah, they couldn't afford the Hermes suitcase on that trip.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Like, it's just wild what actually takes place on the ground sometimes.
I bet. But that just leads to, again, I go back to, and we'll get away from this, but it leads to how you speak about the world really working? I'm going to assume you don't pay attention to the news, you don't watch the news, you don't really pay attention to the media, because all of it in your POV is not real. It's all bullshit.
Yeah, like I'll like touch base with it really quickly,
Yeah.
and then I'll utilize my own like perspective,
Of course.
and I have like a group, the Lethality University, where I'll actually like post like my podcast and stuff in there,
Yeah.
and I'll give people perspective, and I'm just like, hey, look, like, but keep in mind though, I might even be wrong, because I tell you what, dude, like I've seen some shit. You know, when you start getting to like these upper echelons of like classification, I mean, even I'm sitting here like I will never even act like I know that this is real, because it's so fucking crazy scary that like I don't even want people to think that I could even possibly conceive that something like this exists. So
You broke up there on the levels of classification. Say that again. You said, so with stuff that goes up the levels of classification, what?
yeah, well, it probably broke up for a reason. It's, it, it it's mind blowing, man. Like when and it all comes down to money and survival, and you know, it's wild.
Edward Snowden. I'm going to suspect that when you saw all that happen and you see it still today, you're like, oh yeah, yep, mm-hmm,
Yeah.
And I cracked that comment because our just the gesture around, you know, you made the comment and all of a sudden the communication broke up. I joke that whenever I communicate with my friends in the US, I'm up here in Canada, you know, the wall also breaks up the internet from time to time. So, but I would suspect that you subscribe to the same school as Edward Snowden when it comes to how all that works with on the military side of things.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I subscribe to the same like belief systems or as that guy. I don't know too much about him and who he is or what the fuck he
But
does.
maybe just more importantly, what he revealed, and just not, let's not judge Snowden. Let's leave Snowden over there. I'm speaking more about, here's all this information world that you guys all don't know about and you should know about because it's pretty messed up. And you know, you're being, you know, there's real truths here that you don't know about, people.
Yeah, I thought everybody knew that when he released it. I was like, I thought everybody
really?
knew. Yeah, I was like, I thought everybody knew you were being spied on. Like, the fuck's the big deal? But there was some other stuff too about like some field ops that he, you know, disclosed, which kind of put some people's lives in jeopardy, from my understanding.
Yes. Yeah. So Joseph, you've been awesome. I want to be respectful of your time, and I know we got started a little late here, but I also want to give you an opportunity to speak a little bit about JM training. I want to speak about today, and I want to speak about the businesses that you're in, and I want to give you a platform and an opportunity to speak about now kind of the next stage in life for Joseph. Right? You got the kids coming up, you got businesses coming up. You're clearly a successful human being. And I mean that with all respect. You got a family, you've had all these experiences, you got, sounds to me from our conversation, you got your shit together, you're on your way, dude. Right? So, you know, what's going on in the next year? JM training, Safety Cross Academy, like talk to me and talk to Nation about, you know, what the next 3 years hold, next few years hold for Joseph and how you're building your life moving forward, man.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier I'm an anti-violence advocate. Every dead body I've ever stood over, it's just like, why? It's such a waste of fragile, beautiful life. And so I decided that I wanted to help corporations and schools and people survive this active shooter bullshit going on. So I started Southern Cross Safety Academy, and Southern Cross is just a constellation in the sky in the Southern Hemisphere. And
can I just interrupt you? I saw it. I was down in Australia with swimming with great white sharks a few years ago, and I'm up here in the Northern Hemisphere, obviously. And I remember the moment when the guy's like, "Hey, look up in the sky. You've never seen this before." I'm like, "Oh, right. I'm on the other side of the planet." And it was really neat to me. So those that are listening right now, if you don't know what I'm speaking about or Joseph's speaking about, unless you go to the Southern Hemisphere and you look up in the sky, you don't see the same constellation. I was like, "Where's the Northern Lights?" He's like, "No, Keith, wrong side of the planet." I'm like, "Oh, right." Then he goes, the Southern Cross instead. I'm like, "Oh, so I know what you're talking about."
Yeah, and
cool, man.
It's a part of like the Marine Raider lineage too, from like World War II. They would use it to navigate when they were in their boat.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And so I understand people don't know how to deal with active shooters, and that's what we live in, is an active shooter environment when we're in a special operations team. And so I wanted to help people mitigate, you know, the likelihood of it, and also be ready for it if something does happen. Because if you have a great plan in place and they can't kill a bunch of people, well, people are eventually going to stop doing it. And that's where Southern Cross really came from. And then throughout 2020 and the riots and all that stuff, I realized people don't know how to defend themselves, and you know, cops aren't always going to be available. So JM training is like the individual, you know, training. So I do a lot of firearms, and we we launched a online platform. It's called the Lethality University. And the first segment that we're getting ready to launch here in May is going to be the Home Defender series, where it's everything that I do as a special operations Marine to keep my family and my home safe and fortified against anything. And that's where I provide like a lot of valuable insights. There's a course curriculum that's interactive as well. And, it's just to get people squared away and just capable and ready with mindset and the capability and the means to protect what means most to them.
Oh, I love your purpose, Joseph.
Thanks.
What a great reason to get out of bed every single day. Honest to God, whether it's crack a joke, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, or 2 o'clock in the morning, you're like, I'm getting up to go and save some lives today. And what I love about it coming from you, with all respect to everybody else who's been on the show, you've stood over, looked at, and been a part of a lot of dead bodies in your life. That's just a fact. I'm just calling it what it is. So you're like, why? Yeah. And I love that you're asking that question, why? And I love that you're looking around going, shit ain't changing. People are going to walk up into schools and business with guns and keep shooting people. So shit's not changing. So you're like, okay, I'm going to offer a solution to get people prepared for when it does happen, not if, when it does happen. So I applaud you for that, man.
Thanks.
That's a great purpose. What, again, the moment behind the moment, Joseph, what was it? A 2 o'clock alarm clock? Was it a news story where you're like, that's it, I'm done with this, I'm going to help? Yeah,
it was just me trying to figure out, I'm not going to kill myself. Like, what kind of value can I provide to the world, and what have I been pretty successful at that point in my life? And that was, kind of just combat. And I really just can't believe that we locked schools down. What's crazy is I've talked to 67 schools and universities, and none of them have ever worked with me. None of them. Yet I keep the highest security credential in the world, CPP, Certified Protection Professional. All my experiences, college educated, everything. And not a single school will let me create the emergency policy and procedures for them. And I just don't
think that is
ego, and they're just fucking scared and dumb. But a lot of it's ego and arrogance. And it's common sense. If anybody's listening, if there's a shooter in your school, get the fuck out. Plain and simple. Like, the further you are from somebody with a gun, then the harder it is for them to kill you. Why are we even like, well, let's come up with a way to lock the whole school down? Like, how how many people are killed hiding? It's like and my numbers might be a little off at this point. It's been a while since I did the math, but it was like over 86% of all casualties were hiding.
Well, I've never understood. Thank you. So thank you. I've never understood this, why they say to people, lock the doors, go hide under the desk. We're talking schools. I'm not the expert like you are in this. I'm just some schmuck in a red shirt with a black hat and a red logo on it. And I've always questioned why you tell people to go and hide in the room.
Dude, well, what's crazy is I've given speeches and seminars, and I post social media content about this. And I've done this in front of thousands of people, and not a single person has said anything different. Every single other person, except for idiots on TikTok, like, they all say, we were wondering the same thing. Well, if I'm on the first floor, why don't I just get out? If I'm on the second floor, why don't I just get out?
Because yes, so I will not argue. I'll present a different POV. Somebody might say, yeah, but if you're running out, the guy's going to shoot the people running out. Fair, but instead of, if there's 100 people running out, he might only get 3 or 4 instead of walking from room to room to room to shooting the 30 people in one room, 30 people in another room. Next thing you know, 86% of the people hiding are all dead.
Yeah, I mean, so, and that's where I tell people, I'm like, hey, all right, so there could be what ifs, right? Well, what if he places explosives on the outside and fucking blows the place up, right? So we can't do is we can't dive into the what ifs, but what we can do is we can just look at the objective scientific data. And the objective scientific data is that of, if I'm 5 feet from you with a gun, can I most likely shoot you? The answer is yes. If you're 30 feet from me with a gun, will I be able to shoot you more accurately or less accurately? And the answer is less accurately, and so forth and so forth. And then if we look at all the empirical data of where people have been wounded and killed in all these active shooter incidents, and it's kind of hard to define what an active shooter is because even governments don't have a defined definition of what that is. But, aside from like Virginia Tech and the Las Vegas shooting, those are kind of like anomalous occurrences. The vast majority of people are killed, like the vast majority of people, like over 90%, are killed within 15 yards of the shooter. And that's because most people die from wounds in the first initial volley of gunfire. So once they first start shooting, and while hiding, yes. and how far can you run? Most active shooter incidents are over in 4 minutes for a number of reasons. They run out of ammo. That's when cops usually show up in the States. But how far can you run in 4 minutes?
What do you say to some of the policies being discussed where let's arm the teachers and arm the administration of a school?
I don't necessarily. You better have some damn good training, man. I don't necessarily agree with it, but at the same time, I'm not against it. It's just a matter of, well, what's the criteria? Like what's that all about? Because again, I believe those capable of great lethality are capable of preserving great peace, and it's the only people who can actually keep it. And so, if they've got the right training, if they're doing like some crazy high qualification, they're constantly doing, rehearsals, they're constantly proving themselves with like zero tolerance gun issues. Like, hey, you can't just like go to the bathroom and leave your gun in a stall. Like you're done at that point, then cool. Sure. Like why not? Yeah.
May I speak freely with you?
Of course, man.
I believe maybe the challenge that you have with the message is that I believe that you are very much a humanitarian. I can tell your heart is on your sleeve. Your heart's on your face. Your heart is out there. I can tell it is. I can hear it in your voice. I can see the way you present it. I wonder if just the way that we're communicating that is what people just maybe misunderstand with you.
Yeah, it could be.
And I'm not knocking. I'm simply endorsing what your message is because I hear you. You're here to help. Yes, you've sat on the south side of Chicago. Yes, you've been in many different theater. Yes, you've been in combat. Yes, you've shot at another human being. And yes, that's all presented in a very aggressive, harsh way. But it's because of all of that why you are positioned to speak from a place of heart. Because you actually don't want to see death. You don't want to see the shit you've seen. You're like, no, everybody. I've seen it all. Believe me. Just believe me, damn it. I'm trying to prevent what I've seen. That's what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, it could be, but also keep in mind, like I've talked to so many different schools and so many different people on this topic that, I'm told that, I have a very, like maybe when I first got out, it might've been a bit of an abrasive approach, but I've learned how to, manipulate my own behaviors.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of people come up to me after like these seminars. Like I've given seminars to like all the major universities in America.
I'm not saying it's an abrasive approach. I like the way you communicate. I think that it's just your experience. Unfortunately, sometimes it scares people, frankly, Joseph, I think.
Oh yeah. That I could definitely see.
That's what I mean, right? So when you go and speak with somebody, it's almost like, I'll make an exaggerative point. It's almost like you need to go to these places like just wrapped in a bunch of fur and fluff and Barbie and Kenism so that you're presented in this very, I'm cracking a joke, but really soft mannerism to completely present the contrast of your life experiences.
Yeah.
Right. And then saying, okay, I'm taking the Ken costume off, and I'm only referring to because there's a joke this morning on the show. I'm taking the Ken costume off to make y'all feel comfortable. Let's talk real life now. Right. And that's all. In some ways, it's like, hey, for the first minute, I'm getting you all used to here's my Kool-Aid, but now we're going to talk some real life. And because I think what you're saying needs to be heard. I think what you're saying needs to be heard because what you're also saying is that you're accepting culture of America. You're accepting that gun culture is not going away. People are still going to have guns. People are going to still show up at schools and buildings and shoot people. So let's stop pretending it's going to stop next week. Let's stop just praying for the next thing to happen. Instead, let's start preparing for it. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wish that we could live in a fairy tale world where, taking away and disarming a population has positive outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't. It's never had a positive outcome in the history of all humanity. And that to me is far worse. As horrible as any child is, dying, any human is dying. Again, I'm anti-violence advocate. I can tell you what happens, because I've seen it with ISIS.
Yes.
They literally strolled all across the Iraqi and Syrian countryside, murdering and massacring. We helped facilitate a rescue operation once with these little girls. And, the one was like, I don't know, it was like catatonic or shell shocked. She was raped so brutally that she may have died from her wounds from infection. 14 years old. And so like that exists still. And the only thing that ever keeps something like that at bay, well, what did we do? We got a bunch of dudes with guns and training, and we went in there and we shot all those evil dudes in the head. Mm-hmm. And now they're not raping little girls anymore. So, it's the unfortunate reality of life, but it is what it is, man. The best way we can keep it at bay is by teaching and training ourselves.
Joseph, what, if I can ask you this question before I'm not really in a rush, but I want to be respectful of your time. I'm really enjoying this conversation. Thank you. Yeah. What makes you cry?
I don't know.
Do you cry?
Why do we have to cry?
No, it's a fair comment. I want to, listen, we're talking, man, we're talking hard conversations, right? And we're talking emotion. Emotion is part of it. So let me rephrase the question. You're able to manage that emotion then and set that emotion in the right spot where you don't think about crying then. I've had to learn how to cry over my time, right? I just, as I've gotten older and just kind of managing and learning emotion, right? I haven't seen and been a part of the life you have. I just wonder sometimes of how you handle that emotion, Joseph, where it has to come out somehow, right? And we know that crying or eliciting that type of emotion is a way to express that emotion. How do you express it?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I cry, but I would say that I have tears that
you find a way to emote.
Will tears come out of my face?
Sure. Yeah.
I just don't find any purpose, in allowing myself to become overwhelmed by that. Force of dread. It doesn't serve for the greater purpose. And so,
no, that's a fair comment. And so I guess, the idea of having tears and emotion is probably, and I can imagine what as the humanitarian you are, I can only imagine what makes that emotion rise up for you. So
yeah, it's actually probably pretty easy, than it is for most people. And I think it's because of the complete collection of events in my life. Like if I see like a little child that gets hurt, all this stuff just
comes forward.
Yeah, it's just like all the pain of the experiences kind of just collectively surfaces. But I would never say that I'm going to sit there and cry and scream and grieve. It's more just like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Jeremiah and
Jonah.
Jeremiah and Jonah are going to have and do have an exceptional father. I believe that you're going to share your experience with them. In speaking with you, I believe you're going to teach them a lot. And I can only imagine the kind of adventures that you're going to have with your boys growing up on the, on keeping them on the right side of the tracks, going in the right direction. That's got to be super exciting for you and you and your wife and the boys, and the success you're having in your business. Joseph Malone, thank you for joining me here today in the lab. Would you come back for a round 2 and just kind of keep having the dialogue with me?
Yeah, man, anytime. Hit me up.
That'd be awesome. I would really enjoy that. Anything you want to say before we say goodbye?
Just remember, man, it's all about mindset, and there's anything the mind can achieve or the mind can conceive, the person can achieve. And those capable of great lethality are capable of preserving great peace. If you want peace in your life, you have to be capable of great lethality.
If you want peace in your life, you need to be capable of great lethality. Wow. Joseph Malone. Exceptional conversation. This is the kind of dialogue that I love having in the lab. Got all kinds of guests coming through here, man. I had somebody talking yesterday, imposter syndrome. I had a guy in the show last week, Christian Espinosa, who's ran 3,000 ultra marathons, climbed a number of mountains, almost killed himself, and been in, just these human beings, Joseph, that I'm so privileged, like yourself, to sit here and speak to and open up to me. I'm so grateful. Thank you, man. Just thank you.
Thank you, man. It's been a good talk.
Awesome. So I'm just going to stick you back in the green room for a quick second. I'm going to say goodbye to Business Athlete Nation, and then I'm going to walk you politely out the doors. Maybe I'll just fucking aggressively walk you. Hang tight. All right, Joseph Malone, that was exceptional. I hope you guys enjoyed that chat as much as I did. And I know I say that after most shows, if not all shows, but this was a great one. It looks like we got a comment come. Yeah, exactly, Tom. If you want peace in your life, peace comes with great lethality, right? So I invite you, if you just tuned in late, go tune back to the beginning of the show. Joseph and I got started a little bit late. I was joking around in the beginning there with taking me to bed as we were waiting for Joseph to show up. So be patient. Joseph shows up about 12 minutes in. We had a little technical challenge there. So I invite you to check it out tomorrow morning. Mornings in the lab with myself, Nicole Bernard. We got a couple guests coming in tomorrow morning. And then, of course, tomorrow in the lab at noon, I have noon Central Time, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. We have another awesome conversation with Jean St. Pierre. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to go walk Joseph out of the lab back into his workshop down there in Chicago. I will see you guys. We'll see you